What a compelling story. Unbelievable. Well, joining us now on the set is Inside Sports reporter Melanie Steen. And Melanie, as a minority woman, what do you take away from a story like this? I mean, it's definitely a tearjerker, and you see what Nora Stevenson had to go through.
Yeah, so many great takeaways, Todd. I mean, the fact that he was 1 out of 100 players, and he was the only African American. I mean, just the fact that he even stepped into that role, and then just the fact that it didn't get better over his college career. I mean, that's just the fact that he was so dedicated and he really hung in there. I mean, that really says a lot.
Yeah, and he couldn't go to the awards ceremony. I mean, that's, oh man, it just hurts.
Yeah, but I'm glad to see that the school stepped up and they memorialized him and the contributions that he made. So it was really, really touching to see that. And hopefully, the old wounds he had with Coach Devine, those were all healed after that final kind of act of goodwill. Well,
Melanie, you've been in the sports world. You've been a news anchor in Springfield, Illinois. Metro Sports over the years. I remember you were working with Vicki Pimentel and Harry Schrader, covering a lot of sports events. Do you have any favorite sports events that you've covered over the years?
We were just talking off camera about when the All-Star game came here to St. Louis. That was one of my favorites. We were down there, doing a show outside, and that was a lot of fun. But there's been so many.
Well, think about it. Almost 20 years ago, we were covering the women's Final Four at then Scott Trade Center all over the whole city, and we're still banging it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, some more in recent memory. Even though we've had the XFL and the MLS, I mean, those have all been some great stories, great news for our town. I love doing the stories about the kids out there, the high schoolers, the up and comers, and just the passion that they have for their respective sports.
I enjoyed your wrestling stories. I know you did some follow-ups, wrestling and boxing. You seem to be gravitating towards that, and you see what the coaches and trainers have to go through. What did you get to take away from some of your recent stories at Inside Sports, from just how hard and dedicated the coaches and trainers are?
Well, I have to say that the coaches are very dedicated. Coach Tracy Henderson, he's a boxing coach at Dunn Marquette. He's coached over 700 young people over 5 years. So, I mean, he's made a huge impact in the boxing world here locally. And just, his up-and-comers who've been trying out for the Junior Olympics, and they've just made great strides. With regard to women in wrestling, Kayla Hughes, she's the only female at Alton High School who's currently wrestling. She just started her senior year, and I think she's going to pursue it in college as well. But she tells me that she wants to be a nurse. That's her ultimate goal. It's not to be a professional wrestler, but she wants to be a nurse. She wants to help people and heal people.
That's neat. It's really nice blending the big time stories like the MLS coming to town, as well as some of the human interest stories like this and Nora Stevenson. So really appreciate your great work.
Yeah,
I know that you're super excited about the MLS coming to St. Louis. You've got a female half owner.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's certainly something that is groundbreaking. I'm hoping that this will be the start of more women, female-owned professional teams, not only with the soccer, but also in other professional sports. I'm hoping this is the start of a really good trend.
Hopefully we'll get to cover some of these events and stay busy working. You did some fun work with the XFL.
Yeah.
Oliver Luck, you got to meet him, former NFL quarterback. Andrew Luck, one of the stars of the league, recently retiring at 29. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting when I interviewed Commissioner Luck. We had talked about how the game had changed since he was playing in his playing days, and then with his son playing. And he said, the players are bigger, stronger, faster now, which is one thing. But he said he likes that the sport has actually gotten a lot safer. And then a month later, his son retires because of an injury. So it's like, oh, okay, well, the game is safer in some regards, but, people still get hurt.
What do you think of the name, the Battlehawks?
I love the name, the Battlehawks.
It's become with mixed emotions,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think anything with Hawks, you think it's Chicago Blackhawks, they're a big rivalry, but, so you like it?
Yeah, I do like it. I think the I think it was the LA Times newspaper. They don't like it so much. They ranked.
Who cares about
They
that?
ranked the names of the 8 teams for the XFL, and the #1 team was not us. We were number 7 out of number 8. So they like our name. They don't like our name very much, but that's okay. But that's okay.
And Jonathan Hayes, the former NFL player,
yeah,
you know, he's going to be the head coach. You got to meet all these guys, and I know when you do your stories, you can't always get everything out in it because the time constraints. So, what are your thoughts of him?
Yeah, no, I like him. He was very, very nice, very down to earth, and that was something that Commissioner Luck said really kind of put him head and shoulders above the other people that had interviewed for the job. Also, our new coach had previously played under Bob Stoops. So there's that connection there. I asked him, I said, you know, you guys once coached together at Oklahoma, and now you guys are going to be going up against each other because Bob Stoops is the head coach for the Dallas team. So I said, you guys are going to be going up against each other. Have you talked? And he said, yeah, we have talked. He said, there's no trash talking. It's all mutual respect.
That's neat. Great stuff, Melanie. Thank you for all this insight. Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
I talked to Commissioner Luck. I said, you know, we see you here at the tryouts. Are we going to see you when the team actually starts playing here in St. Louis? And he said, absolutely. He said, I love St. Louis. I love the Midwest. And he said, you guys will see me at a lot of games.
All right, great stuff. Thank you for coming on the set with us.
You bet.
Got a rose with a thorn up here now. Hey, folks, that's our show for today. We especially like to thank Chris Roseman and Melanie Steen for dropping by. A big shout out to our STL TV staff, and we especially like to thank you for watching Inside Sports. I'm Todd Blackstock. We'll see you next time.